All right, let's just get right into it. We are going way back, 60 million years, to talk about a creature that just absolutely defies belief. This is the story of the single largest snake that has ever lived. I promise you, whatever you think of as a big snake, you're about to have your mind completely reset.
So let me ask you a simple question. How big can a snake really get? I mean, what do you picture in your head? Something from a movie? A giant python, maybe? Well, what if I told you the biggest snake in history was bigger than anything you could possibly imagine?
Okay, here's the comparison that says it all. Over on the right, you've got the green anaconda. That's the undisputed heavyweight champion of snakes alive today. And yeah, it's impressive. But now, look to the left. Boa. We're talking up to 50 feet long and weighing over a ton. It wasn't just bigger, it was in a completely different dimension. The anaconda's vertebrae is just dwarfed by Boa's. We're talking 3 times the size. It's unreal. To really wrap your head around that, just try to picture it. A living animal, a snake, that was longer than a city bus and heavier than your average car. This wasn't just some big snake. This was an absolute monster that completely dominated its world.
So the big question is, how on earth did we even find out about this thing? The story isn't some simple one-off discovery. No, it's more like a scientific detective story that took decades to piece together. And the secret was buried deep underground in a place called the Cerrejón coal mine in Colombia. Now, this wasn't just any mine, it's literally the fossilized remains of a massive ancient rainforest. So as miners were digging for coal, they were unknowingly digging through a completely lost world. The very first clue actually showed up back in 1994, but it was so bizarre they thought it was a fossilized tree branch. Then another piece was found in 2002. But the real aha moment didn't happen until 2007 when these fossils finally made their way to the Florida Museum of Natural History. And then in 2011 came the Holy Grail, the one piece of the puzzle they were desperate for, the skull.
You can just imagine the scene when they finally figured it out. Scientists put the fossil next to the vertebra of a modern anaconda, and they were just stunned. It was that moment of realization. They weren't looking at a plant. They weren't looking at a crocodile. They were looking at a snake of absolutely impossible size. So, naturally, this discovery raised a huge question. It wasn't just that it was so big, but why? I mean, how could a snake possibly get this enormous when nothing even close to it exists today? Turns out, the answer is all about temperature. To really get Titanoboa, you first have to understand this basic idea. Snakes are ectotherms, what we usually call cold-blooded. Unlike you and me, they can't make their own body heat. They are completely 100% dependent on the heat of their environment to power their bodies. And 60 million years ago, Earth was basically a hothouse. Average temperatures were consistently over 32 degrees Celsius, or about 90 degrees Fahrenheit. For Titanoboa, this meant its metabolism was running in overdrive, 24/7. This supercharged engine let it digest more food, way more efficiently, which fueled the explosive growth it needed to get to that titanic size. And this, to me, is the most fascinating part. Titanoboa's very existence is the proof of this ancient, hotter world. A body that massive could only have been supported by that constant, intense heat. In a way, the snake itself became a living thermometer, telling us exactly what the climate was like 60 million years ago. Okay, so we know how it got so big, but what was life actually like for this thing? I mean, how does a creature that's heavier than a car actually move around, hunt, and just survive? Did it go slithering through the jungle, chasing down prey like something out of a horror movie? Nope, not even close. The reality is actually way more interesting, and it all comes down to basic physics. Yeah, on land, Titanoboa would have been kind of clumsy. It would have been vulnerable. Gravity and friction were its worst enemies. A body weighing 1.2 tons would have made moving a nightmare. And it's even possible its own weight could have crushed its internal organs. So the answer was water. Titanoboa was an aquatic ambush predator. It spent its life in the swampy rivers of its rainforest home. The buoyancy of the water supported its massive body, freeing it from gravity's pull and letting it become a swift, silent killer. You have to imagine it just waiting there, perfectly hidden, with only its eyes and nose above the surface. And when it decided to strike, its power was just almost unimaginable.
Scientists have estimated its constricting force was somewhere around 400 pounds per square inch. So what does 400 psi actually feel like? Try to picture the weight of two full-grown African elephants pressing down on your chest. Its victims didn't slowly suffocate. No, their bones were instantly shattered. Blood circulation just stopped. It was over in a flash. So what's on the menu for a predator this powerful? Well, other giants, of course. It was eating ancient crocodiles that were even larger than the ones we have today, and giant turtles the size of a pool table. It was, without a doubt, the apex predator of its time.
But how could it possibly swallow something so huge? That's why the skull discovery in 2011 was such a game changer. It proved that, just like modern snakes, its jaw could dislocate, which let it swallow prey that was unbelievably large, even for a snake of its size. We're talking 3 times wider than its own head.
So it was perfectly adapted. It was impossibly powerful. It had no natural enemies. Where did it go? How does a king like this lose its throne? Well, the answer, once again, is all about the climate. As the Paleocene era came to a close, the Earth started to cool down. And for a creature that was so dependent on extreme heat, this was basically a death sentence. Its metabolism slowed to a crawl, making it sluggish, unable to digest food. Its swampy river homes started to dry up. And on top of all that, new warm-blooded mammals were showing up, creating new competition. Everything that had made it a success was now gone. And that's really the tragic irony of the whole story, isn't it? The intense heat that made it possible for this titan to even exist was the same thing that, when it disappeared, guaranteed its extinction. It was a specialist, perfectly designed for one very specific world, and it just couldn't adapt when that world changed forever. And that leaves us with a really fascinating and maybe a little unsettling final thought. Titanoboa disappeared because the world got colder. But today, our world is getting warmer, and it's happening fast. So you have to ask the question, as we start recreating the conditions of that ancient hothouse world, are we also setting the stage for the return of giants?